Democrats who supported Trade Promotion Authority, but it didn't stop there. They then held our feet to the fire throughout the negotiations to make sure we brought back agreements that had strong labor environmental standards, that reformed ISDS, that made sure we dealt with the digital economy, that made sure that we struck the right balance between innovation and access. And I'm very grateful to the Congresswoman and her colleagues who stayed so focused, so deeply substantive throughout the negotiations and got us a better result. So thank you for you and your colleagues. It's great to be here. Rita, thank you, Kim, for having me. I've always wondered what the trade prom would look like when they turn the lights on. Not a bad-looking crowd. It's good to be here. Let me begin with some words from Winston Churchill. This is what kind of speeches with Wild does. Quote from Winston Churchill. He said, "I am an optimist. It does not seem too much use being anything else." And for those of you who know me, you know I'm also an eternal optimist. It may be an occupational hazard as a trade negotiator. Now, my staff drafted a beautiful, long speech about all of the Obama administration's accomplishments in trade trade. But I'm going to assume that you're all well aware of them, and so I just wanted to share a few parting observations instead. When President Kennedy created STR back in 1962, it reflected a conscious effort to make sure the United States spoke with one voice on trade, one place, where all the trade interests of the government came together in a single coordinated effort with no opportunity for forum shopping or contradictory agendas. That voice be housed in the executive office of the president so that our foreign trading partners knew that when it spoke not just with a departmental voice, but with the voice of the President of the United States. And that voice represented both our domestic and our national security interests. And that voice be accountable both to the executive and to Congress, given Congress's constitutional role in regulating commerce with foreign nations. Now, I couldn't be more proud of the work that USTR has done these past years along each of these lines. Anyone who knows and has worked with its staff knows that they are the furthest thing from political hacks. They're the finest, most dedicated, hardest working, most committed public servants to be found anywhere, focused like a laser on doing what's right for American workers, farmers, ranchers, and businesses of all sizes. They don't expect to be thanked, but they do deserve our utmost respect. Thank you. We've just witnessed a remarkable period in trade politics, a period in which the gap between perception and reality has never been wider. Poll after poll show that Americans understand that we live in a global economy, that we can't wall ourselves off from the forces of integration, and that on the whole, the opportunity to engage internationally, to open other markets to our goods and services, to raise standards around the world has been good for America. In fact, long-term surveys show that support for trade is higher now than at almost any time since the 1970s. And it's highest among young people who've grown up as global citizens in the internet era. But as the most recent campaign demonstrates, while public support for trade is high and widespread, it is largely passive, while opposition to trade, though perhaps a minority, is often vocal and passionate. This is not solely a US phenomenon. Witness Europe, where the rise in populism on the left and the right, the lagging economic recovery, the increasing concern about migration, and declining faith in European institutions, most directly reflected in Brexit, has virtually paralyzed the European Union. We saw that in TTIP, where it became clear long before our election that there was stiff political resistance across much of Europe to moving forward with an ambitious agreement at this time. And we saw it in CETA, where the decision that trade agreements should require the approval not only of the European Commission, the European Council, and the European Parliament, but also 38 regional parliaments, has raised serious questions in the minds of the EU's trading partners. We, of course, have our own difficult trade politics, but at least we know that there's a clear process laid out in TPA for considering trade agreements. And now, more than ever, we need a strong, effective Europe that's capable of showing leadership in the global trading system, particularly at a time when China and other emerging economies have yet to assume responsibilities commensurate with their role in the global economy. Let me say a word about China. Arguably, for 13 of the last 15 centuries, China has been the dominant force in Asia. Only during the last 2 centuries did it find itself eclipsed by others. One of the defining features of our time is how to accommodate the rise of China into an international system that is far more interdependent, economically, politically, and strategically than ever before. Our approach has been to give China a seat at the table and press them to be responsible participants in global governance, such as through the G20, but at the same time to use every tool at our disposal, including trade enforcement, to hold their feet to the fire when they fall short of that objective. There have been some notable achievements, such as the US-China Accord on climate change, which laid the groundwork for the Paris Agreement. And there have been tough responses when China failed to live up to its responsibilities. We heard a lot about the importance of being tough on China throughout this recent campaign. I agree. It's important to be tough with China on trade, even as we find ways to work with them on challenges from North Korea to Iran. This administration has filed 15 disputes at the WTO against China over the last 8 years, more than any other country. We've won every case decided so far. Cases concerning barriers to U.S. auto exports, discriminatory taxes, export restraints on key materials, restrictions on cross-border services, and more. But here, I have to admit to being slightly perplexed. There is simply no way to reconcile a get tough on China policy with withdrawing from TPP. That would be the biggest gift any US president could give China, one with broad and deep consequences, economic and strategic. It would be huge for China. See, China has a regional strategy. It has the One Belt, One Road initiative, the Silk Road Fund, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. It has the South China Sea excursions, and RCEP. Separate initiatives, but in combination designed to position China at the center of the Asia-Pacific region. They are executing on their regional strategy. The question is whether we're going to execute on ours. From our friends and allies in the region to our own military commanders, we've heard clearly that failure by the U.S. to move forward would be a debilitating blow to U.S. leadership and credibility in the region, one that would create a void that China is all too happy to fill, and one that would leave our closest military allies and partners no choice but to line up behind China. We see it happening in real time. What we feared and what we warned would come true is coming true before our eyes. As New Zealand's former Prime Minister Keynote made clear, if TPP fails to get ratified, it will be a massive lost opportunity for the United States, both for their consumers and businesses, but also for the geopolitics of the region. Because in the end, that vacuum is not filled by the United States, it will be filled by someone else. It has to be. As Prime Minister Lee of Singapore said, if the U.S. is not prepared to deal when it comes to cars and services and agriculture, can we depend on you when it comes to security and military arrangements? But perhaps most important is what the commander of the U.S. Pacific Command, Admiral Harry Harris, made clear when he said, TPP would strengthen the stability and security by deepening our relationships throughout the region and raising the bar to entry to protect the things that matter. And obviously, our partners who signed up for TPP see it as a vital demonstration of America's enduring commitment to the region. Now, I can't imagine why any president would want to abdicate our leadership in the Asia-Pacific, to be responsible for handing the keys of the castle to China, for driving our historic allies and China's historic rivals into China's arms. It would be a strategic miscalculation of enormous proportions. Why would we cede our role as a Pacific power? Does anyone really think U.S. interests are better served if China, rather than the U.S., writes the rules of the road? Would anyone here prefer China's approach to the piracy of intellectual property rights or the cyber theft of trade secrets?